All right, Coach Lee here. Let's talk about all things blood today. I recently got my biomarker panel back, and it was a monster. So it was 88 biomarker tests. If you go to your local general practitioner doctor, I counted up the last one that I had from a general practitioner doctor was 24 biomarkers, and so 88 is quite a bit more complex. The process was fascinating. I received the kit in the mail. It had 4 vials in it. I took that locally, had it withdrawn, had some very lovely people withdraw my blood. It was fantastic. One of the vials had to be spun for 30 minutes. Went back to the hospital, picked up my blood, put it in the shipping, had the shipping label already, all paid for, everything, shipped it off to a lab in California. It was a great experience. And, in the last 5 years, especially, the prices have come down. These types of services have really exploded. There's online, there's a big service right now called Inside Tracker. They've got a lot of momentum. They've been out there for years, and they've been really looking at large biomarker panels with athletes. And so, let's break this all down. It's quite an exciting thing to break down. I love the biomarker panels. Every transition period, every say around October, November, I really advocate that my athletes that I work with get biomarker testing done, get their blood work done, whether it is through their general practitioner or whether it is through these specialized services. Just we got to check under that engine. We got to know where your blood is, right? We got to know what you should be supplementing for, what you shouldn't be supplementing for. Remember, you should always supplement for deficiencies. You should not be taking supplements just to supplement, right? How do you know if you're deficient? You have to look at the blood. Some people are different. Some people love it. They jump on it. They want to do it. Other people, not so much. Got to twist their arm a little bit more, but it should be done. You guys are putting so much work into nailing workouts, into nailing events, that you have to look under that hood to see what's going on, to see what you need to supplement, what you need to change, potentially dietarily, how we can bio-optimize some things potentially, okay? That's all important, right? And so it's all, it's all part of the process, and it's getting done. And so this video is a way for me to hopefully motivate, the athletes who haven't gotten this done yet to get out there, get their blood work done, because I'm showing you my blood, right? We're going to get down into the nitty gritty of who Coach Lee really is. Okay. So, man, for this biomarker panel, I really had one big goal, right? So I had one big theme for this last 6 months. I had a 6-month plan, and my biggest thing that I wanted to do was work on my glycemic profile. Okay. My blood glucose levels, my HbA1c. If you've not heard of HbA1c, it's basically a 3-month cumulative look at your glucose. So typically, glucose is tested in several different ways. There's a fasted glucose, which is great to get a baseline, but it can be all over the place, right? Just because it's fasted, just because it's one moment in time, okay? It could change throughout the day, right? So an HbA1c for athletes coaches really like that one to be done, simply because it is that 3-month average of glucose, and it shows us how well, it gives us one indicator of how your metabolism is working. Are you a fat burner? Are you a sugar burner? We need to look at these and think about these types of things. And so that was the number one thing that I wanted to nail. Okay. Vitamins and minerals. I really, I 100% believe in supplementing for deficiency. And so, but I kind of knew that, we're headed into the winter. So I supplemented with vitamin D for the past 6 months. Vitamin D paired with K. So if you do get the vitamin D will cause, I'm not sure the mechanism of how it works, but it pushes calcium out into the blood. The vitamin D supplement will push the calcium out into the blood instead of into the bones. And so what will happen over a long period of time is the calcification in your arteries of the calcium, and you get you develop hypercalcemia, and then that ends up into your arteries, and then you show up into the doctor and they're probably not going to be happy. And so, you can Google this. Vitamin D and vitamin K, they go great together. My vitamin D was actually very specific as well. Most vitamin D supplements are made with a synthetic compound called cyanocobalamin. I don't like cyanocobalamin. Cobalamin is simply cobalt metal. I use a fourth from the company called Thorne, and I'm not an affiliate with them whatsoever. But Thorne makes a methylated cobalamin that they put into the vitamin B12. So if you go to Walmart and you get that thing and it says cyanocobalamin, right? What is cyano? That's cyanide. And so it's a synthetic thing. And then you can look like, where else do they make, put cyano in, this is basically the cyanide. What's it made from? And so I pretty much made a goal this last 6 months not to put anything that had the word cyanide into my body. Okay. So that's really important. So a lot of B12, a lot of athletes take B12. It stimulates the red blood cells, a lot of great things. Vitamin D is great because it just sits at the bottom of so many chains, and vitamin D is the only vitamin. So right now I'm sitting here, I have hundreds of vitamins in my blood. Vitamin D is the only vitamin that your body makes, right? Cholesterol and sunlight, boom, vitamin D. Vitamin D just sits at the bottom of all of these chains, and it is one of the most important vitamins in the body. Tragically, your doctor probably, if you're going to a general practitioner, probably will not do that vitamin D test. Every time I've asked for it, they've just like, no, you don't need that. You don't need that. But the research shows that at least 56% of the world's population is deficient in vitamin D, and athletes even more so. So take vitamin D extremely seriously in your life. Your general practitioner might take it seriously, but you should take it seriously. Do the research on vitamin D. Again, it just sits at the bottom of all these chains, right? So like one chain it sits on the bottom of. It sits on the bottom of this one chain. Boom. Got great vitamin D. Tickles all the DHEA, then that tickles the testosterone. DHEA is a precursor to testosterone. So you got all this great stuff. So vitamin D sits at the bottom of this chain. So if you want optimum testosterone, start with a vitamin D. It's pretty amazing. And so do the research and jump in on a lot of this stuff. Okay. Another one that I wanted to do was magnesium. I don't know a lot about magnesium. I know a lot more about B12 and vitamin D than I do about magnesium. I got a book coming right now called The Magnesium Miracle. And I do know that it sits between, depending on who you talk to, the research you read, it's involved in, like 300 to 600 processes in the human body. So magnesium is an extremely important one. Plus, it's a dilator. So if you take it, commonly it's taken before bedtime, and it relaxes the body and all that great stuff for deeper sleep. And sleep is crucial for me. Okay. Now, I had no concern about my cardiovascular panel. Okay. My lipid panel. All that stuff, didn't care about it. Didn't try to eat a quote unquote low cholesterol diet or low saturated fat diet, whatever. I ate plenty of steak, right? So a big problem for me in my diet is getting that maximum amount of protein. I'm going to make another video on protein, how much protein you should get. So I'm 165 pounds. I should be getting somewhere like 180 grams of protein a day. If you laid out 180 grams of chicken breasts, this whole table would be filled, right? And so this desk. So it's a lot, and it's hard to get the protein. And then you got to stagger it because your body's only going to want to deal with about 25 to 30 grams of protein at a time. So you got to stagger it like every 2 hours. So protein was a goal for this biomarker panel test. But again, I didn't care about if I was getting saturated fats. I didn't care if I was eating a big fatty steak or anything like that. No alcohol, processed foods, another thing that I did. So I've been sober now for this January will be for 4 years. I have no alcohol. So there is no alcohol in this biomarker panel whatsoever. And then processed foods. You know, how I was raised, it was pretty bad. I was just given to the commercial system, cereal for breakfast, Pop-Tart for breakfast, bagels for breakfast, like these pancakes that you can just put in a toaster, you know, whatever. I was raised really bad. Or poorly in terms of my diet. And so, you know, I really, you know, I have always gone to processed foods in some amount, not a great deal. So I wanted to eliminate all processed foods. And literally the only thing that I bought from a box was organic pasta, right? I didn't eat rice. I did, you know, all I had was organic pasta and steel cut oats, right? So that was kind of my main source of if I was going to have anything processed, those two things were pretty much it. I ate a lot of beans. I ate a lot of grass-fed butter. Ate a lot of pasture-raised organic eggs. And if I could ever find them, I would find ones that had no grain feed, no soy feed. So, you know, even a pasture-raised egg will have those things. Okay. And then avoid glucose spikes like the plague. Okay. So I'll let you do the research on that. There's a great book called Glucose Revolution, which buy on the Audible. It's like $12, but it's a 7-hour book, and that book will will change your life. But as athletes, one of the things that we want to do is that we primarily want to be fat burners, and especially this time of the year, we want to change and make sure that our metabolism is really on the uptake with burning, with, you know, the whole fatty acid oxidation process. We want to make sure that all that's dialed in, right? So the idea behind the insulin spikes and the glucose spikes is that, you know, if you're sitting on the couch and you eat some Doritos, you're sitting on the couch, you're doing the level of work that should just be burning, you know, fats. Put in the Doritos or whatever, boom, your body's going to burn sugars. It's not going to burn the fat. And then when you don't burn off all those calories that you just put into yourself, all those excess calories are going to be turned to fat as well. And so I really wanted to maximize my fat oxidation these past 6 months. Like really, you know, do nothing that was going to spike that glucose, that was going to, you know, put a ton of sugar into my body, right? It's the term of insulin sensitive versus insulin resistant. And I wanted to be as insulin sensitive as possible. I did a video recently on insulin sensitivity versus insulin resistance. I'll put that down in the show notes. Yeah, so that was it. So let's jump into the blood work itself. Okay. So one of the things that I got a whole bunch of panels here. We'll just run through a bunch of this stuff. You know, as athletes, one of the things that we did, and one of the things that I actually have supplemented in the past was my iron. So, you know, iron is crucial for, you know, red blood cells, all that great stuff. And, you know, as athletes, it tends to be low in athletes. And so I had no iron supplementation whatsoever for this particular test. And as we can see, I'm good. I'm all within the ranges within my iron. So all that's really good. Vitamin D, I'm good once again. So I was supplementing with vitamin D and it is good. And so now that that looks good, I'm actually going to back off my vitamin D supplementation, and my vitamin B12 was actually really good as well with the supplementation. So my goal for myself is to um, back off my vitamin D supplementation and keep going with my methylated form of vitamin B12. Magnesium. Now this was a great test, and so it costs a little bit more. But if you're very interested in certain minerals, certain vitamins, right? So there's an intracellular test. So it doesn't matter as much as how much it's the vitamin or mineral or whatever you're trying to look at is in the blood. We really want to know what's in the cell, inside the cell, intracellular. So there is a test. And so that's important for your biomarker panels. And that if you want to look and think about, maybe you have a deficiency here, maybe you have a deficiency here, you can order the intracellular version of a test and it will be a little bit more money. So I have magnesium. I take a lot of magnesium through Celtic salt. So one of the things that I've done these last 6 months is that I've gotten rid of all salts possible, except for Celtic salt. And I use a lot of Celtic salt in stuff that I do. If you Google Celtic salt, it has 82 minerals in it. It's a really cool salt, and magnesium is one of those things in there. But I was also supplementing a very tiny amount in the evenings with magnesium. So magnesium looks great. Really happy about that. This is sodium, potassium, chloride. All these things really look good. Now this is my bilirubin. My bilirubin. The only red flag here is high, almost double the amount. Bilirubin is not, it's always been high. So I can go back 8 years of blood work, and my bilirubin has always been high. It's, if I'm correct, I've never gone down the bilirubin rabbit hole. I've never read the great big book on bilirubin, which I'm going to do now. I'm gonna learn about all this stuff. But it has to do with the liver and some waste product, I believe, of the liver. So whatever the bilirubin is, I've always been high. And so, doctors, general practitioners, registered dietitians who have looked at my blood work have never raised any red flags, but I still want to understand that. And so that's another, the thing about these biomarker things, and that these are all reference ranges. These reference ranges are designed by a committee largely for a general population. And so they can be highly political. Okay. You can have one guy sitting there on one side of the room screaming, no, that's a perfectly normal bilirubin. You're perfectly fine. And you can have another guy on the other side of the room just screaming at the top of his lungs, that's unacceptable. That's way too high of bilirubin. So you always have to take your reference ranges with a grain of salt. Okay. And they might not be athlete reference ranges. And so that's why it's very important that you talk about your biomarker results. I'm a I am a certified nutritionist, okay? I can look at your blood work. And then basically within the scope of my certification, I can send you a link to more research on the subject, right? So, and that research might have recommendations or something like that. But if you want specific recommendations, you have to go to a medical doctor. You have to go to someone who's at least a registered dietitian. That's very important. Okay. And the goal of this biomarker panel is, like, you might get it done and you might shop it out to several different people. Like, you could just email your results to a guy in California, a woman in New York, or something like that, to get the best comprehensive understanding of your biomarker panels. But once you get that PDF, start sending it off and talking about it with several different people until you find, that person with the knowledge that gives you confidence that you're getting a great reading, not only on the reference ranges, but any potential biooptimization. The thyroid panel, that's something that a lot of athletes also look at. And so with my thyroid panel, there was no red flags whatsoever. If you are on a thyroid medicine, and that's very common. So I deal with masters athletes, and it's very common that I'll have a masters athlete come to me that's on some kind of thyroid medication in their 50s. It's one of those, statins, thyroid medications, something for hypertension. Like, these are common things that I will see. The thyroid, it's fascinating. There's a lot of good things. There's a lot of great information and discussion out there about, so say for instance, like, if you show up to the doctor with a low T3, they're going to put you on something to start stimulating the thyroid. Well, you got to understand, and this is in the literature, this is everywhere, that 80% of your T3 is not made by the thyroid. So 80% of your T3, let me repeat, is not made by your thyroid. It's made outside of the thyroid. So it's a great conversation to have with the appropriate individual. Like, should you be on the thyroid medication, or, what dietary changes, what supplemental changes can I make to get my T3 up if you're actually on thyroid medication? And I know them by name. There are people who will look at that and be able to, determine should you be on the thyroid medication or not. Okay, so that's very important. So there's no red flags. Obviously, the coach in me, this seems, I'm at the low end of this T3. Is there a bio-optimized reference range for thyroid? Again, I do not know. My fatty acids. And so the omega-3s, this is another one that I have not gone down the rabbit hole of omega-3s. It is a very common supplement, like a fish oil supplement. People take it all the time and regularly. I've never taken it. I just never liked the size of the pills. I've always tried to manage things through diet, but I know that since I live here in the mountains of Virginia, I'm eating really clean food now, and especially since these past 6 months, and all of our fish sold at the local grocery store, it's all farm-raised fish, okay? So it's all farm-raised salmon. It's all farm-raised cod. There's nothing line-caught, wild-caught, anything like that. And so I just don't eat a lot of fish. And so my omega-3s, that is something that I am going to supplement with. I have a recommendation from a registered dietitian on what I should do. Going through, listening to a lot of people that I respect. I really respect Dr. Peter Attia, and he uses a brand called Carlson. Thorne makes a great brand. There's a lot of great brands of omega-3s out there, and so I just got some in, and now I'm on my second day of doing omega-3s. And so in 6 months, I'm going to be super disciplined about my omega-3s. I'm going to find, if I have to travel an hour to get some wild line-caught fish, something like that, I'm going to do that. And I'm going to start bringing more fish into my diet. Okay, this is the big one, okay? So, some of these panels can get really super political. All right. It's crazy. And so I'm going to dig into mine. And so keep in mind that this is not medical advice. I am not a doctor. This is for educational purposes only. Hopefully this will stimulate your thinking, give you some rabbit holes to go down with, give you some rabbit holes, give you some questions to ask your doctor, give you some questions to ask your registered dietitian who or whoever is looking at your blood work. Again, this is educational and entertainment purposes only. And hopefully this is very entertaining. I love this stuff, man. So let's look in here. So right now, you look at this, I take this to a doctor. The doctor, it's just common in the medical industry. If I take this to my general practitioner, they're going to want to see this under 90, boom, 175. They're not going to they're not going to ask too many more questions. Every general practitioner that I've been working with since age 30, I started doing my blood work, I guess, around age 37, and I've always had a high LDL. And I'll never forget, back when I was drinking pretty hard, had a terrible lifestyle, even though that I was training, nailing my workouts, nailing my watts, was relatively thin. And I had a doctor back in when I was, so I'm 51 now. So this was, 15 years ago, wanted to put me on a statin immediately. And I looked at him and I said, doctor, but what do you mean? And it's like, I'll have a terrible lifestyle. I should just quit drinking. I should just clean up my diet. And he says, but I can't trust you to do that. So my recommendation is to get you on a statin right now. So if I would have listened to him at age 37, 36, I would have been on statins now for 15 years, and I didn't. And I do a lot of things. I mean, I monitor my data in every way possible. I have an Apple Watch that monitors everything. You can get these for $35 on Amazon. These are highly recommended by a lot of people that I talk to and a lot of people that I trust. Do your own research, but I think this blood pressure, the big cuff that goes on your arm was $34, if that. And it's, and so I am monitoring everything as much as I can. But let's look back into this. And so this is great. And here, when you see all these, you're going to, a lot of people are going to freak out. They're going to be like, oh my God, I got LDL. It's terrible. The LDL is off the roof. I'm going to, have cardiovascular disease, right? And so cardiovascular disease, why is it a problem? Because it is the number one cause of death in America. But, when I look at the biomarker panel, and it's the same way I work with athletes. I don't look at one metric. I don't look at FTP. I look at all these different metrics, and I've got dozens of them by which to judge you as an athlete. It's the same thing with the biomarker panel, in my opinion, and you have to look at other things. So let's jump back in here. So, my LDL is 175. My HDL is very good, which is very interesting. My triglycerides is very good, which is very interesting. Okay. My C-reactive protein is very good. Now, C-reactive protein, that's your inflammation. A lot of athletes will get this test because they want to understand the level of inflammation in their body. Are they overtraining? A high C-reactive protein is a good indicator that you are actually overtraining. So many things look good except for my LDL. And so when you start going down rabbit holes, you start to find key figures that say, that argue that LDL is not the problem. Blood fat's the problem. Triglycerides is the problem. So what happens when you have low triglycerides? You have low blood fat. And basically what that means is that you have these big, healthy LDL molecules, right? These big, fluffy, happy guys. Cholesterol is crucial to your body. You need it. It's there for a purpose. You need ADL or LDL. You need HDL. They have specific functions. Cholesterol is very important, not only in the construction of cells, but the formation of vitamin D. So many things. You need cholesterol in your life. And so right now, because I have that low blood fat, all indicates that I have these big, fluffy, happy LDL molecules. Now, here's what happens. You raise those triglycerides, okay? 175, that stays the same. But what happens is that your LDL starts duplicating, but they get smaller and they get angry. And then that becomes the problem. When you have those high triglycerides, you have a different LDL molecule, and you have a lot of these LDL molecules. And I just think of them as that they're small and angry, and they're just wreaking havoc in there to deal with that high blood fat. So what is one of the ways that you can reduce your blood fat? One of the ways that you can make yourself, get that triglyceride down. Well, you can eliminate processed foods. You can eliminate refined carbs. You can get rid of sugars. You can get rid of seed oils. And that has been, my goal for the last 6 months, to get rid of, and I didn't mention this earlier, but just any industrial processed seed oils. So all I use in my house is an avocado oil, small batch, glass bottle, dark bottle, freshly made. Same thing with extra virgin olive oil, glass bottle, small batch, dark bottle, and newly made, like newly batched. And so, I'm super happy with my triglycerides. I'm super happy with my HDL. Now, the one thing that we can talk about here is my Apo B. This is getting a lot more attention lately, and a lot of influencers, and I'm gonna have to track this down more. So I don't understand this. Okay, so right now, Dr. Peter Attia put his Apo B up there. I don't know, a couple weeks ago, and he sits at 100, and so that he's living a super clean life. He's looking at his blood like all the time. Especially if you've listened to Dr. Peter Attia. And so he's sitting at 100. I'm at 129. I want to go down that rabbit hole a little bit more. But I love that more people are doing this very thing. They're looking at the cardiovascular panel, right? And they're looking at it in relationship with the glycemic panel. So let's look at that. So my hemoglobin A1C, that is, your 3-month average of blood glucose, and mine at 5.4, it is solid. This means I am insulin resistant. It means that, if I go eat a candy bar, not much is going to happen. My body's going to attack that, get on it, deal with it, done. If a person with, diabetes eats a candy bar, then they're going to have a major problem, right? So someone with diabetes or type 2 diabetes is going to have that higher H1C. And so it's something that, a lot of coaches look at. I'll never forget, a couple years ago, I had not heard of H1C, and I was listening to Joe Friel on legendary coach Joe Friel. And he only mentioned, he was talking about blood tests and things like that. And he was talking about, he only mentioned one blood biomarker by name, and that was the HbA1c. That's how important that is for coaches. And then another thing that we had tested was insulin. Now, your doctor, if you go to a general practitioner, these are ones that they're not going to consider, and they're most not likely going to consider it with your cardiovascular lipid panel. Okay. And so this is really important. So, I take that high LDL very seriously, but all the data, all the other panels seem to suggest that I have these nice big fluffy LDL happy molecules running around in there, and that I shouldn't be worried about it. And so here's another thing, what we're talking about, reference ranges. This reference range of 99, that's 40 years ago, that was 300, so it just keeps going down. It keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And so the reference ranges are a very interesting thing. And, you as a person, you have to question those reference ranges, discuss those reference ranges with a medically capable person. Here are some reference ranges that I got for what I like from a very trusted person. In that, let me look at it. So here's some reference ranges that I personally am going on for. I don't recommend these for anybody else. I only recommend these for myself. So HDL above 39, preferably above 50. Boom. Triglycerides below 150, preferably between 75 and 125. So apparently my triglycerides are low, and I have questions on that. Can your triglycerides be too low? LDL between 100, right? Starts at 100, not lower than 100, but somewhere between 100 and 220. So that, those are, recommendations from someone that I trust, who has done, hardcore research, has looked at all of the research, has memorized all of the research. And so, this is all stuff, right? But, I got to be honest, right? I grew up in the anti-cholesterol revolution of and anti-fat everything in the 80s and 90s. And right, it was always in your face. It was on every television show. It was on every commercial. It was everything. And so even now, when I see a high LDL, first thing I want to do is grab my heart, like, oh my God, what's going on? But you really have to look at it in the context. Like I always say, context is king. And so when I look at that LDL number, when I look at that high ApoB number, I'm not nervous at all. Compared with my glycemic profile, looks fantastic. My insulin, everything looks good. My triglycerides are low. And so, I am super happy with all that. I'm taking my blood pressure. I'm looking at everything every day. I take my blood pressure. You can put it into Training Peaks. You can track it over time. So I do all that. I have perfect blood pressure. I have perfect everything. And so, that's really crucial for me. And so for me, I look at it in the context of all of that. One thing I wanted to say about this, the C-reactive protein, in that I had all these surgeries done, these crazy surgeries, and I have all this scar tissue in here, and it needs to be removed, and I'm not going to the hospital to have it done. So if I even have a little bit of inflammation in my body, I got this thing in my body that will tell me immediately if I'm inflamed at all, right? So it will hurt, right? I will have to lay in a certain position or whatever. And I'm telling you right now, at age 51, I have great mood, great energy, no inflammation. It feels like I didn't have these surgeries 15 years ago. And so I'm doing really good. So I was really happy with that C-reactive protein as well. Now, that's all I have. And so again, this is, hopefully this encourages you to think. Hopefully it encourages you to go down a lot of rabbit holes. Some people will know, how to tear apart the engine of the truck, but they have no idea what their blood work says. I know, athletes, when they come to me, they'll be taking lots of supplements. And my first question is, well, why are you taking that supplement? Do you have a deficiency? Can you show that to me in your blood work? I like to question these things, and then I will get them to hopefully I can get them to the right person that can give them specific recommendations on how they should be supplementing, how to change your diet, things like that, right? Should you go all carnivore? Carnivore is huge right now. Keto, that's always out there. Mediterranean, right? That's always out there. Like, what diet should you do? And so, yeah, and hopefully that this serves as a way to think about this stuff. We didn't even look at my hormone panel. So that was my testosterone. My testosterone is fantastic. All my hormones were fantastic. And so, age 51, I'm not on any kind of testosterone boosters. I'm on no pills. I'm on no medications. For testosterone, a lot of men in their 50s will get on some kind of testosterone, but I'm not on any of it, and my testosterone looked really good, and so my hormone panel was great. So get a great biomarker panel that has a lot of stuff that's athlete specific that you can dig into, and there's lots of books on this subject. Yeah, so I got, you could go and just get all kinds of books. Like these two books are written by doctors, Lab Values blood tests. This one is very interesting. The Ultimate Guide to Decoding Blood Results. And so I'm like, well, who is this person? This person doesn't exist. And so I think this book is just a complete chat GPT fabrication. But, going through there, it gives you a lot of great things to think about. It gives you reference ranges, of course. It doesn't challenge the reference ranges, but it still gives you a lot of great information in there, stuff to think about. And then there's always Google, right? Google does a great job. You can put in these tests, and then you can start going down rabbit holes, start listening to podcasts. Dr. Peter Attia talks about blood work in reference to his own blood work all the time. Do go down the Dr. Peter Attia rabbit hole. There's a lot of great people out there right now that are, publishing. They're linking to the research that they formulate their conclusions from. I really trust those people that look at a lot of blood. Dr. Peter Attia looks at a lot of blood, right? So for instance, Dr. Huberman, I don't know how much blood he actually looks at. He talks a lot, but I don't know if, how much blood he's actually looking at, right? So all of his theories, do they pan out in a blood biomarker panel? Dr. Peter Attia, right, is drawing all of his stuff from extensive experience from decades of looking at blood. And so I really prioritize those type of thinkers in my life, and I hope that you do too. So guys, if you like this, so this was a big one. So thanks for listening. For those very few of you who made it this far, thanks so much for sticking around.